Would Wilson Parsons please come up? Wilson Parsons was born in Halifax, October 18, 1932. His was a sporting family. His father, Greg, was a school teacher by profession and an excellent all-around athlete, as was Wilson's younger brother, Eric. Baseball was one of the many sports they loved. As a youngster, Wilson distinguished himself as a scholar, doing well throughout his school career. Parsons was, among other things, a football player, playing both ways in the interior line for QEH, before moving up to perform the same functions for Dal. He moved from football season right into hockey, once again playing at both the high school and university levels, while also playing junior hockey for St. Mary's. He also played some baseball as a youngster, usually playing shortstop. As a 15-year-old, he was an infielder in the Halifax minor system, before reaching juvenile, where in a game one night, they moved him to the pitcher's mound because none of the real pitchers were available. He was just big enough and just fast enough and just wild enough to scare the hell out of his fellow juveniles. He was later to do the same thing at exceedingly higher levels. When his coach saw the blazing speed of his fastballs, which were all he threw in the beginning, he took him over to Major League scout Bob Decker, who was then the coach of the Dartmouth Arrows. That was the end of Parsons' juvenile career. He started playing for the senior Arrows that very day. Possessing little more than a blazing fastball, he held HMD batters to a cumulative 159 batting average over 70 innings, striking out 55 and walking 41. During one barnstorming tour to Newfoundland, he pitched and won every game against teams from the American bases. Within a year of pitching his very first game, he received offers from Boston and New York. He had just started attending Dal. When he accepted a $5,000 signing bonus in 1952, he became one of the very few Nova Scotians to become the property of the New York Yankees. He was then 18 years old, 6'1", and weighed 200 pounds. In February of '52, he left to play for the Class B Norfolk club in the Piedmont League. The Tars, as they were called, were managed by Mayo Smith. Parsons stopped pitching when he pulled a muscle in his arm in July because they didn't want to take a chance of re-injury. The Tars captured the Piedmont League pennant. The highlight of his half season was a no-hitter he pitched against the Roanoke Red Sox. In '53, former Brooklyn catcher Mickey Owen was the Tars player-manager. Owen was not the calmest guy to play for. In some ways, he could have been called a forerunner to Mike Tyson, since he ended the season in court because he bit off part of an opposing pitcher's ear during a melee. Owen used to get Parsons angry by returning the ball to his left, then to his right, and then over his head. It must have worked because Parsons led the Piedmont League pitchers with a 15-3 record, 169 strikeouts, and a 2.04 earned run average. The Canadian said the papers was a major factor in the Tars' sweep of their second successive pennant. By then, although Parsons was raw, he had a blazing fastball, a major league curve, and had developed reasonably good control. Parsons left Norfolk sporting 29 wins against 8 losses. He and eventual Yankee star Johnny Cucks were regarded as the two hottest prospects in the Yankee organization. He was immediately moved to their best farm team in Kansas City. In an exhibition game against the Yankees themselves, he teamed with Ralph Terry to hold them to 4 hits, beating the Major League club 5-2. The Yankees who couldn't hit Parsons included Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Hank Bauer, Roger Maris, and Moose Skowron. Unfortunately, the Yankee pitching staff was just as good as their batters, including all-stars like Whitey Ford and Eddie Lopat, making it next to impossible for the young guys to crack the starting pitching rotation. 5 of the 8 years he was part of the Yankee organization, Parsons played AAA ball. In addition to the great Mickey Owen, he numbered among his teammates such stars as Ralph Terry, Bobby Richardson, Clete Boyer, Don Larson, Ralph Houck, and Whitey Herzog. Parsons started his AAA career in championship form in '54 at Kansas City. He pitched a shutout in the American Association opener against Toledo. He walked 5 but fanned 10, retiring the side on strikes in the 1st and 8th inning. Unfortunately, disaster followed. In his second AAA appearance in Charleston, West Virginia, he tore his elbow apart. And despite the Yankees spending a fortune in an attempt to rehabilitate the joint, he never pitched for the remainder of that season. Parsons was really never the same. He was good enough to, in his debilitated state, to play another 6 years in the pros. If the weather was hot, he could sometimes get through a game, but he never threw at full strength. In '59, he started in Richmond again before being moved to Miami, which was then managed by Pepper Martin. He did remarkably well until his elbow flared up again. Late in '59, he came home for a last hurrah, leading the Dartmouth Arrows to the H&D League playoffs. In the first round, they defeated the Truro Bearcats. Wilson Parsons won 2 games. His brother Eric won 1. Wilson had 3 wins in the series final, also hitting well and winning the MVP trophy. His final years in baseball were spent back in the pros as a relief pitcher. He had some good years in this role, including 2 seasons at Denver under manager Ralph Houck. In '60, his last year in baseball, he was 1-0 with Miami in the International League. How good he would have been in the majors is a question which will never be answered, but Coach Herm Kaplan once overheard Harry Hess, the scout who signed Whitey Ford, say that Wilson Parsons was the best pitcher in the whole of the Yankee organization. Wilson Parsons now lives down near Norfolk, Virginia with his wife Barbara, who's from there. He's still actively coaching in youth baseball. His son Chris, 15, led the Colt League this season in pitching and hitting, all of which ensures that baseball is still a major subject at the Parsons dinner table. Ladies and gentlemen, a man listed among those named to the all-time H&D team, a hero who always conducted himself in a professional manner, a man who's always been a great ambassador for his home province and his home country, a perfect role model for all Nova Scotian kids, Mr. Wilson Parsons.
This time I would ask Mr. Tommy Vasson, Territory Manager of Olin Brewery, to please join us for the presentation. Good to see you again after all these years. Herm Kaplan also. Are we on?
No.
We're on now. Herm Kaplan also said if you had signed with the Boston Red Sox, as he suggested you do, you probably wouldn't have hurt your arm. You don't really believe that.
No, not really.
Wilson, of course, came from a baseball background, a dad who we both remember tonight, Guy Parsons, former teacher at QEH, who I know was your original inspiration and directed you along with brother Eric, who was here tonight, and another great pitcher. So the pitching became a tradition in the Parsons family.
I think so. Dad was a great catcher in his day, and I think he taught us well.
You ever think back and wonder if medical science had been able to provide the kind of service in the 1950s when you hurt your arm, if you wouldn't probably would not have ended your career? I'm thinking of things like Tommy John had his arm rebuilt, rotator cuff surgery is commonplace.
In those days, there were just, I know this Dr. Sidney Gaynor of the Yankees wanted to go in there, but he would just cut, period. I mean, he didn't have any of the apparatus or anything like that that was needed.
You know, when they say Wilson Parsons rose in the Yankee organization, nobody really has an appreciation of how close you came to the Yankee Stadium, because in those days, that was a tremendous organization, staffed with a lot of great players throughout the organization. And the fact that you pitched for their AAA team was an indication of future greatness.
I remember the first year I went spring training. Whitey Ford and Eddie Lopat were mentioned, but there was Vic Rasche, there was Allie Reynolds, and the young fellows, we just looked around and there's no way. There's no way. And I went spring training the following year, and I can still see Casey coming throughout the outfield to the younger boys. I'm going to send you down. I'm going to send you down.
Well, you know, after all those disappointments, it was so fitting that you came back to Nova Scotia, back to your native area, to complete your career in such a burst of glory in 1959.
Well, I enjoyed it very much. I called, when we decided to call it a day, I said, let's go home to Nova Scotia for the summer. And then I called Herm and said, do you need somebody to help you through the season? He said, yes, come on.
You're a full-time resident of Norfolk, Virginia, and you still come home to Nova Scotia for the summer.
Well, I've retired now, and we're looking forward to spending maybe at least a couple of months a year here.
Wilson, it's great to see you. You looking fit? No, you're not fit? Well, you look fit.
Thank you.
Okay. Wilson Parsons, ladies and gentlemen.